evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, great leaders and great scholars. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on the 2nd April. Wow, we're in April already. The year is really moving so fast. Thank you so much to join this community of leaders. My name is Mazwe Majola. I'm from the Worldwide Institute of Leadership and Development. We meet every Wednesdays to discuss leadership. We as leaders, as we always say, we are leaders in leadership. We as leaders, we converge here, we come here to empower each other, to inspire each other, to encourage each other, to admonish each other, to correct each other wherever possible, because as we always ask, who's going to correct us? We need to correct each other and to learn, to unlearn, to relearn, and to co-learn together. It's a community of leaders. We've got academics from different universities all over the world who joined us. And we are so humbled and grateful for that. We've got leaders from public sector, private sector, community leaders, religious leaders, members of the media, politicians, managers, leaders, as I said. And then we just here, we discuss leadership, and we've learned so much. We started in 2020 in the midst of COVID, and we never stopped. Every week, can you imagine? Every week, someone once asked me and said, Prof, how, I mean, every week. And I said, I don't know even myself, because when I started this, I thought it was just a once-off thing during the time of COVID. Just let's assemble leaders, let's encourage each other. And then leaders, then they said, we want this more. And we thought we'll meet once a month, but they said, no, let's try weekly. And then since then, we've been meeting. I don't have the statistics in front of me, but I do have somewhere. It will be wonderful one day, probably next week, just to give you how many sessions we have had since we started, and how many speakers who have addressed us, and how many leaders we have, or how many participants who have attended this. We'll do that next time, whenever we have time. And I always say that 95% of the colleagues who attend are our past speakers and our past panelists. So we are so glad and we are so humbled that as leaders, we know that it's important sometimes just to learn from each other. You will get your turn to address us, but when others address, then you come and listen and also learn from each other. That's who we are, that's what we do. We are leaders in leadership. We have covered almost, I don't know how many leadership topics. So whenever I engage speakers and then they ask, so what topic? And then you can see that really we are coming from far. So thank you so much to our regulars and to our members, those colleagues who are really here almost every day. I mean, I know that those that we are coming as far as 2020, as I'm saying, when I see my professor there, Professor Ndou, and other colleagues, Dr. Peter, and many others. Sorry, obviously I can't see Dr. Sifuko, and many others who really, can you imagine, since 2020, we've been walking this journey together, and others kept on joining us, and they never stopped also being with us every Wednesdays, or as they can make it. So thank you so much. But a special welcome to our colleagues who are joining us for the first time. If you are here for the first time, You're so welcome, and thank you so much for joining us. Please feel free and do participate. I mean, this is a safe space. These are leaders, and we just learn from each other. So don't be diffident. Don't hold back and say, no, I just want to learn from others. Yes, it's important to learn from others, but we'll also like to learn from you. There's a very good reason why you are here. So thank you so much for joining us. Just before I introduce the speaker, as I said, that all the years that we've been here, even though we've had conferences, we have had seminars, we've produced books. I've got books that I've written alone as Professor Mazwe Majola, and are books that have been a product of this this platform. I think we've got 3 books that have emanated from this platform. Leaders in Leadership. We've got Women in Leadership. We've got the Leaders Challenges since 1994. And then we are currently busy with the 4th one, The Power of Leadership, that will be published yeah, we'll let you know when, but we are currently busy with that one. So we have really produced things, and I'm so happy that at least in our little corner, there's some impact, some contribution we are making in our society and our country. So thank you so much for your contribution, colleagues. Tonight, we are discussing another very important topic, sustainability leadership. And really it has come to a stage where we all know that what we have is what was preserved and left by our forefathers and our fathers for us. And the question is always be, what are we leaving for our children and for our grandchildren? In terms of, obviously the speaker will be speaking to us, but how are we making sure that that what we have, we are protecting it, we are preserving it, so that one day our grandchildren will say, at least we have something that we are left by our great parents and our parents. We are discussing sustainability leadership, and will be addressed by my sister Mashudu Ndou. Mashudu Ndou, currently she's an executive or a group executive head responsible for foundations and partnerships at Vodacom or Vodafone. And this is a very big portfolio, sis Mashudu. You look at how big is the organization and how, but anyway, I know that obviously you are doing it with aplomb, my sister, and thank you so much for availing yourself. As I'm saying that we are really running a huge portfolio at Vodacom, but in the midst of your busy schedule, you availed yourself to come and address us. And we were talking earlier on that we are a little bit under the weather, but you didn't want to disappoint me. And I did say to you, it shows that we are a person who understands what it means to arrange or to organize sessions like this, because really, if we are dropped by a speaker on the 11th hour, people who are not in this business, it won't be an issue to them. But to us, you'll know that if I can just phone this person and say, I can't make it, what is he going to do? So thank you so much even for that sacrifice that you've made. So we are ready to hear from you. Please do address us. And again, I do apologize that I've not given the whole of your CV, but most of the people who are here, they know you and you're a very well-known person. We respect you, we admire you, we love you, the work you do. And thank God that we really have such leaders in South Africa. We always say in this platform, we unleash the best that we have because the kind of leaders that have addressed us, it just a testimony that we've got leaders, powerful leaders in South Africa, and we are so proud with that. My sister, thank you so much. Over to you, sustainability leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Again, thank you for the platform. A very good evening to everyone, to the academia, to the scholars, to the leaders. As you said, we do have great leaders. Most of them, some of us, we are standing on their shoulders. So it is humbling for me that one can be given an opportunity to lead the leaders who are leading us. As been mentioned, my name is Mashudu Ndou. Recently joined Vodacom Group as the group executive head for partnership and foundations for Africa. Really looking at drawing all the segments of sustainability together. That's the core. But Prof, before I start, I think it's important for me. You know that I was also checking out last week, so I'm actually happy that my husband have joined as he's driving coming here. So I think it boosts me a bit, give me a bit of boost for me to to continue with this. So as you've said, it is a dialogue which I want us to have today on sustainability leadership, which obviously is not a newest concept, but I think it's a concept with specifically in Africa, we are almost in the journey of transiting from your normal leadership into a sustainability leadership. And now there's another type of leadership which it actually talks to sustainability, which we quickly probably need to move to that as a continent. So firstly, for me, as I said, I'm not going to say slides. I'm just going to talk and then we will dialogue on it. I really want to start with what has become so critical as a winning formula for any leader. Because as you said here, we are leaders, we are keeping each other from different spectrums of leadership. And this is for whether you're an experienced leader or I'm an upcoming leader, which I actually call it leading with purpose and agility. And for one to be able to, you said it, what are we living as leaders? And for one to be able to really be successful in this journey of sustainability, one really have to have that, the purpose and then also the agility. And then that drive then for me, what we call in the world of today, the key success of sustainable leadership or sustainability leadership or sustainable leader. And maybe if I can just quickly take us through on sustainability leader. From my gathering is that is a value-driven approach that really prioritize the long-term success. And he said it very well. Are we leaders who are going to focus on the short term and do what need to be done now, and then we leave nothing for those who are coming after us? Or are we leaders who want to make sure that we can leave a legacy? And in leaving a legacy, it have really now have changed. It's moved talks from previously when we talk about the leaders, every day was, are you managing people? Are you making profit? And lately, we don't talk about the profit anymore. With profit becoming an outcome, we are talking, are we taking care of, responsibly, by the way, are we taking care of social issues in the area where the organizations are operating? Are we making sure that we are integrating ethical decision makings with resilience, innovation, and stakeholder collaboration? And I think there was never been an important time than where we are right now, where we really need to talk about a stakeholder collaboration, where a leader, a sustainability leader, have to talk really have to emphasize and obviously prioritize the stakeholder collaboration. And just quickly on the stakeholder collaboration, and the sustainability leadership drive organization to prioritize stakeholder engagement. And it's quite interesting, Prof, that lately, even when you see the adverts for CEOs, the key number one that they will put the stakeholder management, because I think every organization have realized that if we really have to drive sustainable organization, we need to actually make sure that we are collaborating, we are integrating stakeholders, and stakeholders it is no longer like previously where it was shareholders. Community have really come up, and I think that's where my passion lies. Community as part of the integral part of our stakeholders in really driving sustainability and really also addressing some of the concern which the communities have, which the stakeholders have, investors have, customers have, employees have, even regulators. And as I said previously, it used to be the shareholders and the regulators. But then now things have changed, landscape have changed completely. When you talk about stakeholder engagement, stakeholder management, we are talking about inclusivity, including employees, including communities, and most importantly, including your customers. And if I must say that given the complexity and the challenges which we face as a continent today, I was actually thinking about it to say, okay, now we've got the US challenges, for example, as community of practice, how do we ensure that we can be able to advise our countries as a continent, we can be able to advise our organization and organization, including the NGOs and NPOs who have been really been the beneficial for this. How do we ensure that we can be able to advise them in a way that they can be able to create a true sustainability leadership, to make sure that even when we've got challenges like this, they can be able to thrive, they can be able to continue and create sustainability within the areas where they are operating. And most importantly, so that we don't just survive, we can be able to thrive even in the dynamic pace which we are in right now. And for me, it looks at the concept of leaving no one behind for sustainable growth, which talks about the development of women, the development of youth. And I was glad and happy, Prof, when you talk about the women in leadership. I think there've been a rising of women, a lot of women in leadership, but I think there's more need to be done. There's a youth. I think there's a very big gap which need to be closed, and it need to be closed by the leaders who are around here in this platform today. How do we ensure that when you're talking about the sustainable leadership and sustainable organizations, we make sure that we are having inclusivity, including the youth being developed as leaders, so that again we don't just create legacy which there will be no one who will be able to continue with it. And that for me have really created leaders who can forge ahead with sustainability, present significant opportunity for businesses, investors, and society as a whole. As I said, community, society have becoming the critical part in making sure that we can be able to drive sustainable development goals, we can be able to drive positive impact, and also create a more resilient and inclusive global economy. And I must say that specifically in South Africa, we've seen so many CEOs and leadership of the companies really driving sustainability, really driving social impact, championing, which it have never happened before, championing the social impact, because they understand that if that is not being taken and being driven from the leadership perspective, it is going to be very difficult for us to be able to push the agenda of the UN sustainable goals, to drive the agenda of really driving the social positive impact within our areas globally, actually. And this era which we are in now, we are in a very interesting era, geopolitical, economic landscape changing, social landscape changing, and this is the era where we require leaders who really understand that collaborative approach is warranted to achieve the economics of scale needed to meaningful impact, such as resources and funding. I think gone are those days, Prof, where we talk about a winning organization. We're talking about the organization who have done it by themselves. Gone are those days. These are the time where when you're talking about winning organization, we actually talk about winning continent, winning organizations as a whole, winning society, if I have to put it that way, which is the integration of different parties coming together and making sure that we can be able to really increase the economic of scale, as I said, whether it's resources, whether it's skills, whether it's funding, whether it's capacity, and not only for companies, even giving support to the public sector. And I must say again, in SA, I've really seen most companies really rising up and say, we want to be part of the solution. And I think for me, that's what we talk about sustainable leadership, where companies say we can be able to drive some of the solutions in addressing the challenges which the country is having, whether it's unemployment, which is the critical one, whether it's the lack of the effective infrastructures which we have across the country. I mean, for example, we've got a lot of platforms where CEOs and leadership, they sit and discuss in terms of how do we manage, for example, rail and logistics, how do we manage security clusters, not government managing it, but to say that together as an organizations and public sector, how do we manage that? And I think for me, that's what when we say sustainable leadership, that's what we say. That's what we're talking about, to say we can come together and create, as you said, the legacy and come together again and address some of the challenges which we're having as a continent. And that for me, it talks to the interconnected forces that shape the future of the organization, the economies, and societies again. You will hear most of the time I'll talk about societies because sustainability and society goes hand in hand, because we are doing that so that we can have the better societies. We are doing that so that we can be able to leave the legacy in our societies. And that for me, it requires a purpose-driven leaders, which go hand in hand, shaping long-term impact, while ensuring, as I said, ethical and responsible decision-making. Again, I must say, Prof and everyone online, in an era which we are in now, where there's a social inequality, economic uncertainty, I mean, I think now it has become worse. If you've listened to the past few weeks, it almost feels like when the US said that we are actually withdrawing the fund, it feels like everything is falling apart, you know, and not only in SA, across the continent. It really felt like, and it's when we do some analysis, it was interesting to say there's a lot of work, there's a lot of support, and there's a big gap which the funds like USAID and other aids actually they try to close the gap. But then I think now is the right time. We're in an era where we can discuss as a continent to say where to from now, you know, where to from now. As leaders of this continent, do we still want to find ourselves in the 5-10 years in a panic mode? Or do we want to find ourselves in an environment where we have already prepared ourselves and ready for to mitigate whatever the challenge might come with the next withdrawal of the fund which might be coming from the other country or other funders as an organization and also as a country. So I think for me that's what it's called. It's fair to say, how do we come in time where there's a social inequality, where there's an economic uncertainty, and make sure that we can be able to drive our sustainability even during that time. And I think for me, it talks to really moving away from the traditional leadership models, which often prioritize short term. I think I mentioned it. This is not the time where we look at the short term. It's the time to say, what do we do in the long-term run to make sure that we can be able to have the systematic impact, we can be able to have ethical governance, and we can be able to incorporate some of the critical areas like your financial gains, stakeholder engagement, and so on. And at the core of sustainability, I must say, last week we were listening to advocate talking about the human rights. And what's interesting is that at the core of sustainability is about human rights, is about equity. An organization who can really understand the relationship between the organization, the people, as well as its policies. It talks also even to the public sector, and its policies and action that impact individuals, groups, and social economic development. It can really create an integrated component of social sustainability and leadership. And I must say that leaders that embrace sustainability business practices can drive innovation I think I'm at Telco, and so it's every organization now who actually talk about driving innovation as the key for sustainability. But in doing that, you need to have a sustainability leaders who understand, or leadership who understand the business practices for them to be able to drive innovation, create job opportunities. I think we keep saying that the unemployment rate is very high. But then as leadership, are we really coming together and say, what can we do from the innovation perspective to help the government, to help other organizations to create job opportunities, to stimulate some of economic growth as a continent, not waiting for government to be able to drive that. Because you have said it very well to say, if we really want to have a better continent and better country, we actually need to be part of some of the solution and be able some of the challenges which the continent is facing. So in the context of investing in sustainable infrastructure and responsible supply chain, not only generate financial returns, but also contribute to long-term economic reliance and prosperity. And I think when you talk about long-term economic reliance, I just made a good example of what is happening between ourselves and countries like America. How do we ensure that going forward, right? We are resilient enough to be able to continue and thrive even in the midst of the uncertainty between the investors, as I could call them, the big investors, and in our country or in our continent. Because I think it's important to raise this, that the challenges which we are having in SA is the same challenges which it might be the Tanzania might be experiencing. How do we then come together and make sure that as leaders, we can help our continent leadership, our government's leadership, in making sure that we are resilient enough, our policies are resilient enough in making sure that we can be able to still continue to drive ethical, sustainable organization as a continent with it throughout. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge that sustainability isn't just about environment efforts. And I'm saying that, Prof, because when sustainability was introduced, there was a big hype talking about the environment and really driving the environment. It is the core for the sustainability. And I must say it is not. This includes economic and social and governance, which we call it ESG now. And those are the factors that ensure that if we need to drive the long-term sustainability, we then need to look at this three spectrum, the economic, the social, and then also obviously the governance, with the support of the environmental sustainability, social sustainability, and economic sustainability as a pillar to drive this what we call sustainable transformation. If we quickly talk about the sustainability leaders as a purpose-driven leaders, as we said, this go beyond making profit. And I think the organization are also acknowledging that it's not about making profit anymore. The shareholders are acknowledging that it's no longer about making profit. Being involved in many platforms where the communities now, they're having the voice. And what's interesting that their voice, they're becoming louder and louder and they're becoming stronger and stronger in really driving not the short term, but the long term success and impact of the communities. Because if the organization is a certain place and then when it leaves, what happened to the communities? And that's what the community now, I always say that the communities now have evolved. You know, they don't talk about what we want to see the impact now. We want to make sure when you live as an organization, what are you living here? Are you living something which it will not make our town to be a ghost town, or are you living something which we sustainable will continue to create more economic aspects or activation within the areas where we are residing in? And I think that really talks to most importantly to the characteristic of sustainable leaders, and then also to the driving, as I said, of the UN SDGs. And I'm not going to go through them because I'm sure all of us here, they know them. But it will be important for me just to share some key few areas or the key characteristic of that. which I think we've spoken about, the seeing beyond immediate goals to long term, understanding how business and society interact in globalized world. Embedding transparency, we're talking about now the ethical decision making, but then how do we ensure that we embed transparency as an organization, as the leaders, and then also navigating during the crisis time and maintaining sustainability commitment or staying committed to the purpose. And I think one of the critical example now is that as organizations within the continent during this crisis time, are we showing up enough? Are we showing up to say, this is what we can do to support our communities where we are? This is what we can do to support our government in the midst of this crisis. We can actually stay committed to the purpose even during the difficult time and show up and be able to balance partnerships with our communities, with our employees, investors, balancing the needs of communities, employee investors, and most importantly, the planet. And there are good case studies, Prof, which have been done already by some of the great leaders. As I said, we've got the great leaders in South Africa, for example, great one. I've really seen them showing up, even really proactively going to government. I was involved in some of them, proactively going to government and say, this is what we want to do as collectively, as companies, to make sure that we can drive our sustainability. But then even previously in other countries, we do have great case studies where they make sure that while they're driving their business strategy, they're also ensuring that they're integrating that with sustainability, and it becomes the core driver of their strategy. But I think it's important, Prof, to share that, as I said at the beginning, that sustainability is a journey. But then this journey, I think, is being hijacked by other areas of improvement which come into play. And I must say that as we move towards sustainable transformation, we do have some of the future trends in sustainable leaderships which we need to look at. For example, the shift from stakeholder from shareholder to stakeholder capitalism. As organizations within the continent, we need to move beyond the profit only model to consider employees, community, and environment. And I think there's a new disruptor, the AI, and technology for sustainable leadership. Who would have thought that the AI can be the bigger driver of the sustainable leadership? And this is where we are right now. As leaders, are we aware? Do we know how we can utilize the AI and data analytics to enhance ESG, carbon footprint reduction, and responsible supply chain and social impact? And I think it's very important to raise this to say, while we are talking about sustainable development, are we ensuring that we are aligned and moving towards the AI and the technology? Because this is what is going to drive the organization going forward. If we're talking about leaving the legacy, this is what it is. It's saying that going forward, we talk about how do we ensure that we utilize AI in driving some of the critical elements within our organization. And I think the last part of it, which I'm gonna spend some time more on, which have become my favorite, is regenerative leadership, which is beyond sustainability. These really talk about the future leadership, which focus on the net positive impact, ensuring business give back more than they take. And I think this is where we are right now, really trying to drive the organizations beyond complying and reaching the SDG targets, but then making sure that as an organizations, as companies, we can be seen as driving sustainable giving back more than what we are taking as an organization. And I must say, we are at a pivotal moment of really moving beyond sustainability. And it is important as leaders to start moving our leadership towards regenerative leadership, which really take more proactive approach. It seeks not only to present, but to restore, to enhance, and regenerate the systems in which business operates. And this will really include, as I said, ecosystems, communities, and economies. And this kind of leadership, as you say, it go beyond the concept, but aiming to create a positive net beneficial impact on the environment, society, and the economy. And really to club the sustainability leadership and regenerative leadership, this is an approach focuses on creating systems that are self-sustaining. And I think that's what we're trying to say, Prof, to say, what are we living? What are we going to live in organizations? Are we living systems, process, which they will be self-sustaining? Are we living communities, which they will be able to self-sustain themselves going forward? Are we living communities, organizations also that will be able to do their own self-renewing? And I think this are some of the critical questions which we need to ask ourselves, because with that, it really goes beyond maintaining the status quo, but it actively improves the well-being of our people, our organization, and most importantly, obviously, our planet. This kind of leadership, Prof, it's focused on collaborative innovation. It's focused on resilience. It looks at the deep connection to natural cycle in order to create the benefits that all the stakeholders, without exploiting the environment or marginalizing the communities. And I think, as I said already, that communities, they're very loud now, they're very vocal. How do we ensure that they're not be exploited as we are driving sustainability? How do we ensure that, as you said, that they can be able to be self-reliant, they can be able to self-sustain themselves, they can be able to even self-renew themselves. And self-renew themselves, it means to say, if there is a new threat, how do they make sure that as organizations, as communities, they can be able to come out of it themselves, come with their own solutions, but then getting support from organization and also from government. And this kind of leadership, it's inherently transformational in nature. But then as you're talking about the sustainability and regenerative, it requires a paradigm shift in how leaders view our roles, not as decision makers on focus on profitability, but then also we need to understand and know that we are the steward of people and planet as leaders. If we are talking about sustainable leadership, we are the steward. So meaning if we are the steward, it means that we've been given an opportunity to take care of and make sure that we can manage, make sure that we can maintain, and make sure that we can uphold the lives of our people, but then also the planet. And this is used to obviously to position and influence the systemic change, inspire action, and regenerate organization from the inside out. Prof, just to look at in some of the key issues in driving this regenerative and sustainability, it is important for me to mention that unlike the traditional leadership, which often operate under the assumption of finite resources and competitive scarcity, the kind of leadership which we're talking about right now is based on the idea of abundance, that society, organizations, and environment can mutually reinforcing. And I think that's what we are driving right now as this good as good leadership which we are right now. And at the end of it, it drives the goal of creating positive sum outcome with all elements involved in thrive. And then that include again the society, the organization, and then also most important the environment. And if I quickly look at some key principles of this leadership, it's systematic thinking and interconnectedness. It is active restoration and renewal, co-creation and collaboration. There's been a buzzword of co-creation, value co-creation between government, organizations, and societies. And I think it is what now driving the sustainable development. It's what now driving the sustainability leadership. And this is embodied in the purpose-driven leadership. And most importantly, someone who can intergenerational thinking of how do we ensure that we can create a long-term intergenerational responsibility within our continent, and then most importantly, making sure that what we do today does not affect the future generation. Maybe if I can just go, because I just want us to spend time on dialoguing this, if I can just go into the conclusion quickly. It is important to note that sustainability and leadership are inseparable in today's global landscape. You cannot separate the two. And leaders, as we are sitting here today, leaders who embrace sustainability will not only enhance long-term profitability, but will also drive positive change for society and the environment. And I think that's what we want. And as we move forward as leaders, it is important that we transit the regenerative leadership, traditional sustainability, by actively seeking, restore, renew, regenerate systems in which business can operate, in which society can thrive, and then which also in which organization and government can also operate. And this really look at the holistic long-term approach that create value, not just for organization, but the broader ecosystems, the communities, and the future generations of our continent. And by embracing these practices as leaders, we can create positive sum outcome that drive long-term success and then also contribute to thriving, sustainable future. And I must say in the last one, the last part of my presentation, this is the time where as an organizations, as leaders, we can use businesses and we can use our platforms, we can use our influence, we can use our positions in increasingly recognizing the need to adapt to change environment and social landscape. It is the time where we need to embrace this kind of leadership, which is sustainable leadership, which allow us as leaders to transform challenge into opportunities, which also need to lead to systematic and lasting change. And if we all be able to do this, I can easily say that we can be able to future-proof the organization and contribute more into the sustainable world. And I think I leave us with a challenge to say, where are we right now as leaders? And I'm not talking about the organizations and the people who are not here at this platform here. Where are we as leaders? Are we moving towards the sustainable leadership in making sure that we can leave a legacy? Are we making sure that what we do and how we do it, we actually integrate with our society, social needs, we integrate with our business needs, and then we also obviously integrate with the environment need. But what's important is that what kind of organizations and leaders we want to live in future when we are all done. We'll be able to look back and say, from the sustainable perspective, this is what we have drive and this is what we have left behind. And we have left the systems and the tools for those who will have to take over to be able to continue and move towards the regenerative leadership. Prof, I'm going to, for now, stop here. And I think some of the aspects, I will mention them as we continue dialoguing on this.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, my sister, Mashudu. Thank you so much. Powerful there, very insightful. And thank you so much for reminding us about the regenerative leadership, because at times we forget about it, that it's a cousin of sustainability leadership. And as leaders, we really need to be reminded about that all the time. I think one of my colleagues, I think is in the call here, Dr. Sifuko. If I remember very well, please bear with me or forgive me if I'm mistaken you, Dr. Sifuko. But I remember in our book, Leaders in Leadership, there's a chapter there on regenerative leadership. I can't remember if it was written by Dr. Sifuko. So colleagues, if they can just look at that book, but there is a full chapter there on that regenerative leadership, which is very, very important. Thank you so much, my sister. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a time now to engage each other, to engage the speaker. Oh, is it you, Dr. Sfoko? Thank you. Because I thought I mistaken you with the other colleagues. Yeah. It's a time now to engage Sis Mashudu. You can do that by raising your hand, or you can do that via the chat room. Anyone really is you can go ahead and anyone. I see my brother there, Ngobani Mzizi. Is Zizi Lamazizi? Go go ahead, my brother. Go ahead, Ngobani.
Good evening, Prof, and good evening to our speaker. Prof, I think I'm one of those who joined you this year, obviously after I met you last year in October for the first time, and I've tried to be present at every other seminar that you've had, or gathering, should I call it. So you acknowledged everybody from the time you started to now, and I felt really special to get that mention. So thank you very much. Well, not in the name, but in acknowledging everybody who is a part of this. Thank you so much to the speaker for today. I found it, extremely insightful, and you gave us the permission to talk and engage and ask questions, which you always do. So I thought today, let me use this opportunity. And as you spoke about regenerative leadership, I must admit it's a concept that is new to me, which I never knew of, but it makes sense, as one speaks, as she spoke about it and as she explained it. But as I go into it, I start asking myself, if from how she defined it, and of course how I've gone in to read about it right now, briefly, in the short space of time since she mentioned it to now, that the focus should be more about restoring what was and ensuring that there's more that comes out after you have left than what you took out from them. With businesses having a primary mandate of profit, that sounds like a very good concept, but in principle, out of interest, it's the first time I hear about this, and I'll read it in the book that you mentioned, Prof, just to get an even deeper concept or understanding. But given the brief time that we have, how feasible is it, or are there any examples that maybe can be shared of organizations who have adopted that particular style, just so that one can be edified and know a little bit more about this? Is this something maybe that we'd be expecting from mines, given that we hear that, not here, but we know that they have a mandate to rehabilitate where they mined previously, seeing Manje, the scourge of Zamazamas and all of that. Would it be something to that effect? But most importantly now, I heard this morning that a lot of organizations, particularly in the West, not heard but read, that they are now reporting less and less on ESG. At some point, it was something very topical where even investors were very pedantic around that. And of course, there should still be a small pool who say that they want to invest in green companies and so forth. But the report that I read is suggesting that the appetite for ESG, as it was gaining great momentum late 2020, early 2020s, late 2010s, to now it is declining. What would be the speaker's view around this? And seeing that things, from what I read, and what is her observation around that particular report that I read today? If you're aware of this, and where does this put the world at large? Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, my brother. Sis Mashudu, can we maybe take 2 or 3? I see my sister there, Dr. Tandiwe Gama. Over to you, Doc.
Good evening, Prof, and good evening, colleagues. And thank you to our sister there, Mashudu, for just igniting us and just sort of, throwing us back at looking at the concept of leadership in a way that is enlightening, in a way that leaves us to think even further. She mentioned, Prof, quite powerful concept to say when we're talking about sustainable leadership, we're talking about collaborative leadership. we're talking about integrative leadership, we're talking about co-creation, we're talking about inclusivity. And I like the fact that at some point she also referred to the ethical aspect of it, to say, you know, in sustainable leadership, we're also talking about the issues of governance, where in that collaboration, in that coming together, in that inclusivity, we also look at the aspect of governance. She even mentioned the whole concept of society, business, and the environment reinforcing one another. You know, so for me, this is just quite insightful, and it sort of keeps us thinking and thinking about the concept of leadership, because much as we can all argue that this is an old age concept, leadership has been spoken about in donkey years in the past, but we're still talking about leadership today. And what that tells us is that this is a concept that somehow in itself is evolving with the times. This is a concept that in itself sort of changes its shape, and is also influenced by the context within which we find ourselves as a people. So for me, my sister, thank you, Mashudu, because then you've sort of reminded us to say, let's keep on revisiting this concept. Let's keep on restudying it. Let's keep on re-looking at it, because we find different shades and different layers in it every time you look at it. So, but having said that, maybe my question here is, Sis Mashudu, having sort of given us that understanding of what leadership, of what sustainable leadership is, how does this concept of sustainability and the legacy leadership talk to what we see today in South Africa and probably even in Africa in terms of leadership? How does this concept play itself out in today's times, in what we see happening? What would be your comment? Does it even play itself out? Are we seeing it? Thank you.
Thank you, Mama. Maybe I must start with you. And I'm smiling here, and I'm like, I will not supposed to be part of the game. Because you said it very well that we have seen and experienced concept of leadership differently, and then depending on the advancement of the countries in the continent, of the organization in the continent, it will be defined and also be applied differently. But then what is important is the question which you have asked now, this concept of collaboration, innovation, you know, inclusive leadership, ethical leadership. Are we seeing it playing in our continent, both in government and also, or should I say, public and private sector? And maybe my answer will be yes and no. Yes and no, with the notion that we have seen so many things happening where we can ask ourselves as leaders to say, is this the kind of leadership in the continent which we want to be? Is the kind of leadership which we are seeing that we will want to have our future as a continent? But then hence I was saying that maybe we need to be part of this. Where are we as the, I'm gonna call it, the credible leaders? Where are we? Are we playing in the space of making sure that this concept can actually be embedded and be implemented? Are we in a space where we, from the distance, we say that this is not happening and this is happening, and that this is what we are seeing in different countries within the continent, and sometimes which things can be changed? Are we taking a role? And probably we are not, Mam Kandiwe. Maybe we're not taking a role, and maybe that's a good challenge you're giving us to say, should we not be, as leadership of great organization, big organization, and leaders in our own right, should not start finding ourselves in the spaces where we feel that we can make a difference and be able to implement some of this concept and evolve with them as time goes. So I think for me, that's how I'm going to respond to this. We've got a role to play. There's a big gap. It is not being experienced, it's not being felt, it's not being implemented everywhere. And I think we see the results. I mean, it's very obvious. And maybe it's time. And I think I must give the recognition and acknowledgement to Prof. Mazwe. I've seen him in different platforms, challenging some of the leadership characters and qualities which we have within our continent. And if we can do that collectively, probably things might move a bit. I'm going to quickly move to the first question by Ubudkobani on how feasible is the regenerative leadership. You are so correct. And maybe using the mining industry as an example, I think I'm one of those who have an opportunity to be part of the value chain in the mining industry. And I must say that mining industry is a very good example and framework which can be used, Prof, in really driving the regenerative leadership. And I'm saying that because there are a lot of mining houses, which I was part of it, which they've really moved beyond compliance. They make sure that we don't just live, but then we live something which is sustainable. But then there can also be challenge and question to say, but it's not all of them. And that is so true. It is not all of them. It's some of those who are doing that. And not only in mining industry, even in other industry like your telco, your finances, your petroleum and gas. I think it is a concept which have been there. We just need to move towards it collectively and make sure that we can be able to drive this sustainability in a way it's supposed to be. So it is there, it has been there, but then again, it's very important to say we have been moving on it in a very slow pace. And I think that is why, Ma'am Tandu, we are saying that it's important that now and then we remind ourselves. And also remind the organizations, we are in a position of influence where we can remind the organizations, we can remind the industry to say, this is where we need to move towards to, so that we can make sure that we leave a sustainable impact within our areas where we are operating. The next question was the reporting on ESG. I didn't see the report, but I can say that there are organizations who have been doing very well. I think we should not take that for granted. And I think that driving and making an example, and that there are organizations and countries, by the way, who have been taking this as it is one of, by the way. But most of the organizations, I think for me, they've been really moving towards the reporting on ESG. And we've really seen the difference. And I think we need to acknowledge and recognize that. What needs to be done is to continue, again, as leadership, drive and encourage and continue advocating. I think it's very important, the advocacy. Continue advocating to say, when you talk about the reporting, it's not about the report, it's about the impact which the economic, social, and governance live and create the impact within our societies. Thank you, Prof.
Perfect. Thanks, my sister. Thank you. I will ask my brother, Dr. Sifuko, just to say a few things, obviously, just to make a contribution on this topic, especially on regenerative leadership. But before him, if I can just pose a question to you, my sister Mashudu, more closer to you, Vodacom. Some of us, we do travel, we've got families, we've got relatives in townships, in villages, and when we get to them, it's so painful. As we were saying that, you've got to do an interview, you try to connect, the connectivity, it's so bad. And I don't know, now I understand why TV, they always ask you location, where are you when they interview you, so that it can show, so that if you're maybe having a problem with connectivity and other things. And it's so painful that in the areas we are living in, we've got fiber, we've got all these things. But as I'm saying that you go to these areas, there's no fiber and the connectivity, it's so bad. Just after Sifuko, if you can just tackle that as you are dealing with, obviously, as you are interface between company and community and other things, have you experienced that, and what maybe because I'm a Vodacom, I'm 07 something. So it's important that when I go, I get connectivity. So, but let me take Dr. Ramushaba. My brother, Dr. Sifuko, any contribution, any input on this? Over to you, sir. Sorry to hijack you.
No. Thanks, Prof, and good afternoon. But I just first have to confirm I just didn't want to miss the session. I'm in hospital. I've been hospitalized for the past 2 weeks. So, but then I couldn't miss the section. So, but I'll touch the issue on generative leadership. But I'll start on regenerative leadership. With an example of Johannesburg, Germiston, Springs, Boksburg, because I'm from East Rand. You know, we need that regenerative leadership, because I can say the councillors or the kind of leadership that we have, they can't rejuvenate something that is dead. So, you know, they don't have skills. You know, you can't fail to fix robots. You can't fail to fix potholes with big budgets. So we lack regenerative, people who can regenerate something new. But on generative leadership, I'll summarize it on artificial intelligence. A school in Bizana, if a child is a child of a teacher or principal and they've got Wi-Fi, and a grade 11 teacher writes an assignment using AI, will a teacher who was trained like me, 1993 or 1985 in the Homeland Teachers Colleges, know this is from AI? It has been copied. So the Department of Education or our government or our ANC-led government or the GNU, but let me put it to the ANC, there is nothing generative about their leadership, because this thing could have been seen coming. November 22, ChatGPT, whatever name it was launched, something could have done to our teachers, let alone AI, let alone, let's talk about Turnitin. You know, that is community universities. But you got lecturers who are old school who still don't want a laptop. I'm talking about the university where I am. They don't want the laptop, they just want their desktop. So what happened to our education system? I foresee a crisis. I know students are using AI at Nelson Mandela to write assignments, and lecturers don't see it. So what about an ordinary teacher somewhere in Pembelani, somewhere in Limpopo or in Free State? You know, I see a crisis of poor quality of education and the qualifications that lacks integrity. Because if you don't, for me, because at least I've done studies on plagiarism and academic dishonesty, I do understand. If I was a lecturer, the first thing to see with the kind of leadership I do, I have to know what is South African English and what is Britain English, what is American English. It's our education system, let alone the teachers, come with generative, you generate new ideas or how to teach these people to understand. Because for me, when I look at an assignment or at the writing, I'll see first the Z. If you start to write realized, authorized in a book, I start to doubt this might be copied from Google or from somewhere. So, but you know, generative leadership, I'll talk about its scarcity. I foresee trouble because we got all these things, and I can talk. In Port Elizabeth, a judge has fined a lawyer because they've used illegitimate, non-existent citations from ChatGPT. Last year, the former lawyer of Donald Trump, Michael Cohen, he briefed his lawyers. He used Google something. And then when the judge looked at it's non-existent. So at least judges can see, can our teachers see, can our academics see that these things are non-existent. I think we foresee trouble when the doctor is going to prescribe using an AI because it's lazy, or he went to a bash the weekend, or he went to a jazz festival. And then when we are there, he's still looking, and then he goes to general AI. I can give an example because I've written a journal on AI and all these things. I asked for a picture that I can have. I was just testing the picture that I can have of an AI, all those webs that happens there. It gave me a picture with some white people there. I said, no, I don't want a picture with people. It gave me a picture of a person, AI. But what I'm trying to say, the lack of generative leadership skills, we all see these things coming, but nobody's doing that we can leave the primary school, but within the realm of high school, from a grade 10, 11, 12, with this access, and from the university, the quality of research, I don't think it is. I know university is still using Turnitin. Turnitin cannot see what is in AI. So what kind of vice chancellors or vice chancellors research engagement and innovation? So I think on generative leadership, we're lagging behind. And you can't challenge the academia, they can't be challenged by somebody like me. And there was one question about the zamazamas. That's when we start to see there is lack of regeneration skills. I'll call the name from Gwedemantashe. It's a good comrade of mine from Alice. But those skills are not there in the department, because all these abandoned shafts can create a lot of jobs if there can be a strategy and a framework. How do we deal with abandoned mines? Because the fact that people are making a lot of money and they're being sold by legal entities as illegal products clearly show that if we can have a solution-driven leadership, not the leadership that just manages the status quo. So that's the understanding from my side about generative leadership. And that, as generative leadership, you can't go to a company and you leave the company the way you found it. That is just the maintenance of status leadership. So I'll just summarize it like that. And thank you, Prof, but you caught me off guard, Prof.
Thanks, my brother. Thank you so much. And so sorry about you. We didn't know that you were hospitalized. Thank you. And so to cut you off guard, yeah, thank you so much for your contribution. I like what you said. You can't get to the company and you leave it as it is or as it was. Well, what we call it leadership. I mean, what impact that you've made as a leader. Thank you. Any thoughts there, Sis Mashudu? Ladies and gentlemen, if there's anyone who still want to ask, we can do the last round, and then we'd give it to Sis Mashudu. But any thoughts on what has been expressed, Sis Mashudu? Over to you.
Yes, thank you. There are also questions in the chat box, but I think I will just start with the thoughts on what Doc have said now. And maybe the question to ourselves is, are we also doing enough to not only, because I'm thinking now here today, Prof, I wonder, do we have government and political leadership on this platform just today? So I think maybe it's one of the things where we need to intentionally extend our platforms to be able to support and capacitate. And I'm going to say capacitate because in my previous role, one of the things we used to do, we used to call it the organizational development for the municipalities. And I think our doc talk about some of the municipalities they've raised here to say, if we are working together and capacitate them, I think we can see the difference. We can make sure that we don't see, if the robots have fall down, what do you do with the robot? You leave it there, lying there for years or for months, or you can actually have a system and process to make sure that when it's fall down, then it's picked up and reused again. And I think these are some of the the so practical things which probably our leadership and I'm trying to Prof to stay away from politics, but I think these are some of the critical elements which our leadership in the continent requires. And how we're gonna do that, I always wonder sometimes, I must say, Prof, to say this leadership in the political industry, I'm gonna say that when they go to training, who trained them? You know, I've been asking myself that question so many times. Who trained them? Because to Mam Tandi's point, as corporates, as leaders in corporate, are we being trained by the same trainers, for example, or organizations, which I think is not. And I think that's where there is a gap. But then how do we then volunteer ourselves, Prof, in making that we can create this kind of accessibility? It's a very difficult environment and platform, I know. I will be involved in that. But I think at some point we need to look at it to say, how do we ensure that we can be able to train our leaders who are currently leading our municipalities or local governments and so on across the continent. Just to respond to, I'm gonna end with your question, where you have asked about the how to ensure that there's a bit of accessibility. I think there's a question or comment by Lwazi, talking about
just follow this, Mashudu. I've seen that. Can we ask the colleagues who, unless they want us to read their questions, I think it's in Tomfuti, Kumalo, Lwazi, and then Nkanyezi. Would you colleagues like to express yourself, or would you like us to read your question? Tomfuti?
Good evening, leaders. Yes, Prof, although I would have preferred reading my comment. However, my question is around the strategies, right? Do we have any strategies in the continent to ensure that we include IT governance also in our conversations? Because you cannot speak about innovation only at operational level, right? I sit on different boards, but I haven't yet grasped where are we standing as a continent to ensure that we practice ethical leadership using technology. As we are having conversations around AI, the truth is technology, it also comes into our boardrooms. It will have a major impact on the decisions that are made by whether it's shareholders, whether it's board directors, in terms of the direction that any company will want to take in future. And how do we ensure that we start having ethical conversations of AI that includes protecting our resources also as a continent. And in terms of resources, lately we're no longer talking about minerals, but let's talk about the intellectual property that exists within the continent. How do we ensure that we benefit? But mostly, how do we, have awareness conversations in the boardrooms, and our ethical committees? Are they really conscious of the impact that IT has in terms of the companies? Will they be sustainable? Are they futuristic in their approach to governance as well? So yeah, that's basically my question, because honestly, I haven't had any conversations in boardrooms about how do we move forward. Thank you, Prof, for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thanks, my sister. Thanks, Tombi. My brother Lwazi, would you like to express yourself? Lwazi will be followed by Nkanyezi, and the last one will be my sister, Dr. Nomvuselelo Songelo. Lwazi, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Prof, and good evening.
Oh, sorry, man. Is it my sister, not my brother?
Yes.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry about that. But But this has taught me something today, never assume on certain names. So from today onwards, I'll be very, very careful with that. Sorry, Sisi, over to you, Mas.
And thank you, sorry, Prof. And thank you, Lwazi, for joining in. Lwazi is my former colleague.
Thank you, Sis Mashudu. And good evening to you as well, our honorable speaker. It is a privilege to have listened to you today. I just wanted to actually share my thoughts around the concept that you shared with us. That, you know, in as much as we are looking to organization to lead this concept, at the end of the day, really, it should be a personal conviction to us that are we living that sustainable and holistic leadership? Who are we developing around us? In our communities, what are we doing? How are we investing? And I'm saying this because some of us really were given a chance. We're given a chance either in a form of a bursary. We were given a chance either in a form of a student loan to go and study. Someone gave us a platform. And therefore, it's up to us as leaders today to look back and saying, considering where South Africa comes from, what are we going to leave behind? And am I, as a leader, going to be a sustainable leader? Thank you, Sis Mashudu.
Thank you. Thanks, Sis Lwazi. Thank you so much. Kanyezi?
Good evening, Prof. Good evening, Memdo. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Actually, Lwazi is my wife, so we are sitting together listening to the presentation today. Thank you so much again. I think my question is basically around political leadership. And yeah, like I've said on my comment there, I always find that these theories on leadership, for me, it seems as if they are targeted to private business and they leave out political leaders. And yet, without the political leadership and will, business would always find it difficult to thrive. So the question is, when do we get political leaders to be part of these discussions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. We'll close with Dr. Nomvusalelo Songelwa, and then Sis Mashudu will give us his response and his closing remarks. Over to you, Sis Vusi.
Thank you very much, Prof, and thank you very much to Sis Priscilla for such an insightful engagement. I think my question is more on the role of the communities. I have, as part of my life, been working with the communities, as far back as 1994. And in my own sector, these concepts have been, and I'm just saying they're regenerating. I'm not sure if this is the correct concept to use, but all the programs over the years, if you like, trace back since 1994 in this country, have been about integrating communities, living social impact, same thing. And we live with communities that are now entirely dependent on the interventions from government. And with these interventions that we have employed through our organizations have actually taken the power away from the communities. And I do work with communities right now in the rural Eastern Cape people, and people are actually saying, we are the ones that are impacted most about, the lack of services here. We need to take control. We need to be working. We need to be collaborating with the people. But very few people go to those communities. Now, the question that I'm asking, now when we are actually using and know at a higher level, we're using regenerative or sustainable leadership, what is the role of the communities in just really taking power and leadership themselves instead of really waiting for other people, because these people have got resources, natural resources, but what they are really looking for is people like yourselves, businesses, NGOs that can reach out to them and kind of have this co-learning, relearning environment. So my question is the role of communities that gives back the power and leadership to communities that is not, is not expecting or waiting for government or some messiah to come. I hope that question is correct. Is
clear.
Oh, yeah, Bulen.
It's clear.
Thank you. Thank you, Sis Nomfusalelo. She was the last one, but I saw a hand there from my brother Peggy. Peggy, is your hand still up? You'll be the very, very last one, and then Sis Mashudu will respond.
Thank you very much, Prof. And apologies for the mishap that happened. However, what I would like to bring forward, I think the latter speaker touched on what I needed to speak on, which is where are the public benefit organizations in the midst of this, and how are the leaders in business looking at them in terms of saying they can also be utilized as conduit for this regenerative leadership, in terms of saying here are projects that the people are looking at. There is CSI, a person from Joburg can move to throughout the country in terms of that. How are the leaders prepared to actually assist in that regard? Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Sis Mashudu. That will be your response and your closing remarks, my sister. Over to you.
Thank you. So I'm going to do the bottom up approach. I'm gonna start with the last one and end with the first one. I think that there's a very critical element which have been raised by both Becky and the doc just before Becky, on one, the role of the community leaders, and then secondly, where are those leaders, whether they are civil society organizations who are leading within the communities. Prof, I'm going to make a very good example of two areas which, looking at SA, we're doing very well in bringing in the voice and then also the decision be made by the communities. Number one, as much as it's got so much controversy, but I think the mining industry, and I think we must give that to the Department of Minerals and now it's Department of Minerals and Petroleum, who have made sure that with the new mining charter from 2020, it was made very clear that there's no company which can actually implement and approve any project which is going to be approved by government. When I say government, I mean local government. They made sure that they give now the responsibility to the leadership of the communities to be the one who actually make those decisions. But what we have seen also, and I think it talks to now back to the capacity building and support of our communities. With that, then you start to realize the vacuum of the leadership within the communities. You are given a platform, you are given opportunity, you are given a platform for you to make a decision, but then there are no leaders. And if they are there, they are not in a space and in a phase where they can be able to make the ethical decisions on behalf of the communities. And I think this is some of the aspects which the industry have struggled with. I've worked with communities for so many years, and this is one of the critical area where you've got those who call themselves leaders, convenience leaders, I must say, Prof, for that specific time. And then when you have to go through the process of making sure that you can do correct, do right for the communities, they are nowhere to be found because they are not going to benefit. It first needs to benefit them. And I think that's where the rejuvenation, regenerative, and then the sustainability leadership needs to be also be spread to to community leadership, because they are there, and I can say that they've got a passion, but probably the know-how is not there. And when the know-how is not there, what comes first is, am I going to be able to benefit? If I'm going to benefit, then I'm going to be very loud. I'm going to drive this. And if I don't get it, if I get it, then I become very quiet. And that's some of the experience which we've experienced as an industry before. And I think for me, it brings the concept of the multi-stakeholder forums. And I think this kind of conversation we are having now, Prof, and I'm looking at you going forward in the leadership programs. I don't know which doors we can knock, whether it's COPTA or whoever, but I think it will better be implemented at the multi-stakeholder forum platforms, where you've got all the different leaders within the communities, within the government, who come together, business communities, and say, this is what we want to do. This is the kind of capacity and support which we can give. And I think industry, they've been willing to support, but again, the leaders are there, but they're just there for that specific moment. So there is a vacuum. I can easily say that there is a vacuum. But there's also a lack of political willingness sometimes. If it does not suit the certain government of the day in that specific area, I'm not going to drive it. If it's going to be against me as a government of the day in that area or administration, I'm not going to drive it. And I think that's one of the challenges which I think Ankanisha said, that the industry have been really struggling. How do we ensure that we can reach a point where we don't talk about the beneficiation of the organizations, but we talk about the beneficiation of the society? And I think those are the conversation probably going forward we need to bring, but then create a platform where we can bring the multi-stakeholder concept into the discussion. And I think we've seen that even I was really involved in most of the presidential just transition roadshows. Where really, again, you see community having the voice. And I'm gonna make an example in one of the area in Mpumalanga, where the one of the power station was closed down. But then the community have been really being very vocal. And there, I can say again, there's a great blueprint where there was leaders who are leading the community and who have the best interest of the community, not for themselves. And I think those are some of the kind of leaders which we want, and be able maybe to transform them into and train them in a way that this can be replicated in the other communities or other societies. When we move to, I think the last question was the political leadership. When do we start including them? And I think, Prof, that I'm going to leave it to you. But I think, again, it's a challenge for all of us to say, as leaders from the different areas, when do we start to have this, not only conversation, but then work hand in hand with our political leadership in making sure that we can be able to make change, we can be able to influence some of the process which we need to influence. And I think for me, I like what I think it was Mazwe said, that it started with us as an individual. And that's where, again, as I said, you see this kind of individualism when you work with the communities. That's where you see it very clearly to say, am I an ethical individual or I'm not? Am I a leader which I want to drive community transformation or I'm not? Am I in an organization where, as a leader in a big corporate, do I want to drive individualism or I want to drive society and community transformation? And I think that's where it starts before anywhere else. That's where it starts. And then there was a comment which was made and a question on the IT governance strategy. And I think it's safe to say that individually as organizations, there are a lot of IT governance strategy. But you raise a very important point to say, when do we start to actually have the continent IT governance strategy? When do we start? And maybe the question is to say, when do we start and then how do we start? Because it is there individually. Many organizations, companies, entities, they've got that. But then when do we start to bring this in a content way? And I'm hoping, Prof, that with the G20 and all these ministerial gatherings which they do, this can be the sum of the critical point which need to be raised, because going forward, as you said very well, we won't be talking about the minerals anymore. We'll be talking about the intellectual properties. We'll be talking about the IT. We'll be talking about artificial intelligence. that is the new minerals, as we can say, we can put it that way. How do we ensure that it's guided? How do we ensure that it's protected for living the legacy of our communities? The last part, it was yourself talking about the network, and I think I must say that Vodacom have been really, it's one of the strategy going forward also, continue to drive digital inclusion and create accessibility across the continent. There's a lot of plans coming to play right now to make sure that we can create that. But I think on top of that, also create accessibility with affordability. And that's one of the drive which from the social impact, from the ESG perspective, sustainable business, and also the businesses that Vodacom will be driving going forward. Thank you, Prof. Is it artificial intelligence?
And thank you so much, Sis Mashudu. Thank you so much for your presentation. Wow, you've really challenged us tonight and inspired us as leaders. Say that when we get to a company, what do we live, or in this planet Earth, what also will we live? And thank you so much for your insightful, your informative, your instructive, your impactful, thought-provoking presentation. We've learned a lot. And again, thank you so much, as I said, for your sacrifice, that you are not feeling well, but you made it. Just for your respect and for your humility. You've really learned a lot tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, we meet every Wednesdays, as I said. Again, next week, we'll be having another session with another great speaker and another topic that we'll be discussing. So please do join us next week. The session is adjourned now. Until next week, to everyone, thank you so much. Those who joined us for the first time, please do come back again next week, Wednesday. Same details, same place, same time, same everything. So you can't say that I didn't know how to join you. If you managed to join tonight, so even next week moving forward, you can join. As I said, it's just a community of leaders. Each and every day, it's a masterclass. We learned something. Tonight, we've learned a lot from Sis Mashudu. Thank you so much. Until we meet again next week, may God bless you and may God bless Africa. Thank you. Until we meet again. Thank you very much. Bye.